NFL draft season is in full swing. So today, let's talk about the 14 NFL draft prospects that, at least in my opinion, are in consideration for the Pittsburgh Steelers to select in the first round of the 2024 NFL draft. The Steelers currently hold the number 20 overall pick in this year's draft. So we're going to be talking about the players that, after the Deontay Johnson trade, I believe to be in play. Before we get into today's list, go ahead and click that subscribe button right now, because we are just getting started with all of the great draft content that we are going to be having right here on Steelers Talk for free all draft season, all right? So you're going to get the latest Steelers draft news, all the players that they're bringing in for visits, all the players that are reported getting linked to the Steelers before the draft. We're going to have that covered for you guys. Also, in-depth scouting reports on all the top Steelers draft targets, positional rankings for all the positions of need for the Steelers heading into the draft this year, and also we'll have weekly Steelers mock drafts. And oh yeah, that's all 100% free. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button right now, because you're not going to want to miss any of this premium Steelers draft content all throughout the 2024 offseason. So before I get into today's list, a little bit of a disclaimer. If you're watching this outside of our live show on Wednesday, we're going to be probably be putting this out on Sunday. If the Steelers make any moves that make anything that I say here moot or whatever, just know that we did this video on Wednesday. All right, so we're doing this based on what we know as of Wednesday, March 13th. So let's start with the positions to consider here in the first round. And I do think offensive tackle, wide receiver, cornerback, and center are going to be on the minds of the Pittsburgh Steelers front office and GM Omar Khan heading into day one of the NFL draft in Detroit in a couple of weeks, right? So let's start with offensive tackle, because I think that there's some very interesting possibilities, because Broderick Jones can play right tackle, but they could also move him over to left tackle. So they have a lot of options at their disposal. And my number one draft target is Alou Fashanu. Now, I left Joe Alt off the list because he's going to go top 10, and I don't see the Steelers trading up for him. But Alou Fashanu, at least according to Pro Football Focus, has a chance to fall to the Pittsburgh Steelers at number 20 overall in the NFL draft. Now, of course, Fashanu is a very well-regarded offensive tackle prospect. He is number 2 on my list of offensive tackle prospects this year, but currently, Pro Football Focus ranks him 17th overall and as the number 4 overall offensive tackle, all right? So if the NFL agrees with Pro Football Focus and Alou Fashanu out of Penn State begins to start falling down the draft board, absolutely, I'm considering even trading up a couple of spots to maybe go get this guy to be the franchise left tackle for the Pittsburgh Steelers and keep Broderick Jones over on the right side. Alou Fashanu, maybe not the best run blocker in the world, but I think he's probably the best pass-protecting offensive tackle in this draft class, at least in terms of what he can do right now. And because he's still so young, in my opinion, he's still got so much room to grow. All right, and then we get to number 2, and I would go with Amarius Mims if Alou Fashanu is not on the board. He played right tackle there at Georgia, and his tape is really freaking good. Now, he hasn't played all that much because he has a little bit of an injury history, and so he's a little bit green in that way, but people are scared to take him because he hasn't played all that much. But when he has played and when he's been on the field, he looks like an incredible offensive tackle prospect. He's got the size, he's got the arm length, he's great in terms of run blocking, which is what the Steelers are prioritizing this year in their offensive tackle prospects. Of course, we know that the Steelers love the Georgia Bulldog offensive tackles because they just took Broderick Jones last year. I think Amarius Mims, if he's there at number 20, is somebody that the Steelers are really going to think about. Then number 3 on my list is Talisi Fuaga, who currently ranks as the number 2 offensive tackle on the Pro Football Focus big board. And I actually had the Steelers taking Fuaga in my latest Steelers mock draft that you can see on the channel right now. I think Amarius Mims might be a Cincinnati Bengal. As much as I hate to say that, they need tackle help, and I have Mims above Fuaga on my big board right now. But Fuaga, menacing run blocker, big dude, maybe is a little bit raw in terms of a pass rusher or a pass protector, but he's a big body. I think he's going to be able to survive on the right side. And if you draft Fuaga, you can move Broderick Jones back over to the left side for the future, and you've got your starting tackle duo locked up for the future. Then at number 4, I've got Troy Fautanu, and I think if Troy is going to be available for the Steelers here, and the first 3 guys on my list are taken, they will think about taking Troy, but as a left tackle. I don't really see him as a right tackle. I think he's a little bit undersized to be a right tackle for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think Broderick Jones would fit better as on the right side than Troy would, but man, this guy is absolutely fantastic in terms of his pass protection, in terms of his arm length, in terms of his athletic ability and his ability to move. And his athleticism is just off the charts. I really, really like Troy Fautanu, and it wouldn't surprise me if he ends up going top 15 and taken before he even gets to the Steelers at number 20. Number 5, J.C. Latham, and full disclosure, guys, I wouldn't love it if the Steelers took Latham at number 20. I think he's more of a true late first round, early second round type guy, still very raw coming out of Alabama. He's a mountain of a man. And they did meet with him formally at the NFL Combine. But personally, guys, if the top 4 offensive tackles on this list are taken, I'm probably going to go and get a different position group here because Latham is still so raw. And the same thing goes for number 6, Tyler Guyton. They did meet with him at the NFL Combine. He's got the physical profile of a potential all-pro right tackle. But like J.C. Latham, he is still so raw. He got beaten the one-on-ones time and time again at the Senior Bowl at Mobile, Alabama. And I'm just not comfortable putting him in a starting role right away with the Pittsburgh Steelers, a team that's trying to win now. So really, I wouldn't want to take J.C. Latham or Tyler Guyton. I'd really like to get one of the top 4 guys on my list if you're taking offensive tackle. Now, coming up here, more draft targets to discuss here on Steelers Talk. But before we get into those, let's have a word from our sponsor here at PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today or go to prizepicks.com/CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100 today. Football season is officially over, but guess what, guys? March Madness is here, and the action on the floor is just heating up in both college basketball and in the NBA. Whether it's tournament season or the fight for playoff home court, there's no shortage of high-stakes basketball moments this time of the year. Get in on the excitement with our friends at PrizePicks, America's #1 fantasy sports app, where you can turn your hoops knowledge into serious cash. You might be asking yourselves, Jack, how does this work? Well, here's how you play with PrizePicks. You can pick 2 to 6 players, and if they'll go for more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can even win up to 25 times your money on any entry. So here is an example of a PrizePicks entry that I actually put out earlier this week on Wednesday. James Harden, I took the more on 3.14 points. That's a super easy one for me. I took the Goblin on Jalen Suggs points at 7.5. I think that one's pretty easy. Jalen Suggs, by the way, Minnesota native. Then you got Jamal Murray. I'm going to take the less on points with 21.5 on Wednesday. I guess you guys will know whether I got those right or wrong by the time this video comes out. But download the app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100 today. With PrizePicks, it takes less than 60 seconds to make your picks, so get started right now. Again, download the PrizePicks app and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more or pick less. It's that easy with our friends at PrizePicks. Now let's get to the wide receivers that I think the Steelers are going to be eyeing as potential first-round draft targets. Number 1 is Rome Odunze, and, you know, this one's weird for me because I don't think the Steelers are going to trade up for a wide receiver just because there are so many special wide receiver prospects in this year's NFL draft. It's such a deep wide receiver class, and the Steelers have so many needs as we speak here today. So I don't think the Steelers will spend extra draft capital to go up and get a guy like Rome Odunze, who is special, who is incredible. Over 60% contested catch percentage. That's unbelievable. That is extremely elite. That's like 20 points higher than an elite number would be. And Rome Odunze, there's like, when you watch the Washington Huskies film, there's at least 2 or 3 times a game where he's making a catch and you just say, that is unfair. He's also a great route runner, very intelligent player, and of course he's a big receiver, so he would fit Arthur Smith's mold on the other side of George Pickens. And man, if you had GP and Rome Odunze on the same offense, good luck stopping that with Russell Wilson throwing them the deep ball. But I just don't think it's in the Steelers' interest to trade up when they still have so many other things that they need to address. So at number 20, who are the guys that they could potentially land? Number 2 on my list is Adonai Mitchell, the wide receiver out of Texas. 4.35 speed at 6'4", and he's arguably, maybe besides Rome Odunze and Malik Nabers and maybe Marvin Harrison Jr. as well, he's probably the best. I mean, most drafts he'd be the number one receiver in my opinion. He's got everything. He's got size. He's got the route running acumen. He's got the burst. He's got the long speed. He's got the deep ball ability. And I just think that he's one of the most complete wide receivers in this year's draft class. I have him as wide receiver 4 right now. And if he falls to the Pittsburgh Steelers at number 20, which isn't impossible, look for him to pair that deep ball ability with Russell Wilson, who has one of the best deep balls in the National Football League, plus that size, I think is something that Arthur Smith would like. Then number 3, speaking of guys that are big and deep threats, Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU. Malik Neighbors is kind of seen as like the super blue chip guy that's going to be taken in the top 10. Brian Thomas Jr. will probably be taken towards the end of the first round, and I really think that 20 is not out of the question for him for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Super big guy, the 10-yard split that he ran at his size at the combine, unbelievable. 4.3 speed at 6'4", like Adonai Mitchell, really good route runner as well. I love Brian Thomas Jr. as a prospect, and I think these 3 guys are the receivers that the Steelers would consider taking in round 1. But let's say they don't go wide receiver and they don't go offensive tackle. What about corner? Because I do think Dante Jackson, he's somebody that's played traditionally on the outside, but he has the skill set to potentially move inside. So who are the outside corners in round 1 that the Steelers could consider taking here? Number 1 on my list is Quinion Mitchell. Now, I think Mitchell is going to go in the top 10, most likely to the Atlanta Falcons. I think that even last year with Christian Gonzalez and Devin Witherspoon, I probably would have had Quinion Mitchell as my number 1 corner last year. He's the complete package. He has the size you look for, the hip fluidity you look for, the recovery speed you look for, the arm length you look for, the strength you look for, and he's got the best film out of anybody in the draft, in my opinion. Absolutely fantastic player, can play him in press, can play him in off coverage. Super good, super complete prospect. I think he's one of the best overall players in this year's NFL draft. Number 2, I have Cooper DeJean. He's kind of like a souped-up version of what Brian Branch was last year, and Brian Branch couldn't play on the outside. Cooper DeJean can. He can play safety. He can play nickel. He can play on the outside. Super athletic, but he's coming off a season where he had a major leg injury. Those medicals are going to be a big deal for Cooper DeJean and where he lands. Number 3, I have Nate Wiggins. And, I think Wiggins is a fantastic prospect. I think he's going to find a home that works out for him. But personally, guys, I don't think he's going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler because I think he's more of a zone corner. He doesn't have long arms. He doesn't play with particularly amazing physicality or anything like that, like Joey Porter Jr. coming out of Penn State last year, for example. So I don't really see him as a Pittsburgh Steeler, but he's going to be a good fit somewhere else. And then number 4, I got Terrion Arnold. And I don't think the Steelers will consider taking Arnold at number 20. If he falls to them in round 2, maybe we can have a discussion. But personally, guys, I think if they're taking a corner, it's either going to be Quinion Mitchell or Cooper DeJean. Now, make sure you guys click that thumbs up icon right now if you are a real one. You watch all of our videos, you support the channel, and you watch all of our live shows, all that great stuff. Make sure you click that thumbs up icon to help make this video the best it can possibly be today. All right, so now the only center that I think is worth taking a first-round pick on is Jackson Powers-Johnson out of Oregon. And I've been saying this for weeks, guys. If Arthur Smith could build a center in a lab, it would be Jackson Powers-Johnson with the way he can move, with the way that he can get to the second level of a defense on those wide zone concepts. And he does it with power, and he does it with strength. And he's a good pass protector as well. I mean, this guy's got it all, in my opinion. And at number 20, if you take care of the rest of the needs, I think it's probably more likely that Jackson Powers-Johnson is the pick. But also you have Zach Frazier, Cedric Van Pran, Bo Limmer. There's a lot of good centers in this year's draft class. So unless circumstances dictate, I don't think JPJ is going to be the pick. But listen, man, I do think that the pick is going to be on day 2 for center because, like I said, there's depth at this position, and it's considered a lower value position, whereas positions like wide receiver, outside corner, and offensive tackle are considered high-value positions. So if you can get a tackle, if you can get a wide receiver, if you can get, did I say tackle? I think I did a corner. You don't have to take a center on day 1. You can get one on day 2 in this draft class because there's so many centers in this year's class that are ready to be starters. So I don't think center's going to be the pick on day 1. I think they'll wait until day 2 to fill that need on this roster. So another possibility that is worth discussing for the Steelers is what if they trade out of the first round? We know they have all these needs, right? They need a new corner, they need a new offensive tackle, they need a center, they need a wide receiver. Let's say the Steelers play it pretty conservatively for the rest of the way through free agency, and they still have a lot of needs to cover in the early rounds of the draft. Something that they could do here is that they could trade down from round 1 to a team that's willing to give them like 2 second-round picks or maybe a late first round and an additional second-round pick maybe, and trade down. That's definitely something to consider if you are GM Omar Khan. You can get more high-quality players in the early rounds of this year's draft, and you can fill those needs with players that are ready to play now. So what say you guys? Let me know. Is that a possibility that you would consider if you were GM Omar Khan? Should the Steelers trade down? Give me a yes or give me a no. Let me know what you're feeling down there in the comments section. So if you want to give me a follow on my social media here on X, I am at Jack_Sperry, putting a lot of stuff on there over the last several days and leading up into the draft. Going to be putting out a lot more. Going to be putting out my first mock draft here for all 32 picks in the first round here really soon. So if you're interested in that kind of content, check me out. And then also at sparedog.football on Instagram. Make sure you guys click that subscribe button right now if you haven't already for extensive Steelers draft coverage all throughout the 2024 offseason.